Well, it has officially happened. This is what we thought was coming. Florida State suing the ACC over their grant of rights and the withdrawal fee. The estimate currently, according to FSU's legal counsel, is said to be over $500 million, 572 million. And of course, it doesn't make sense for FSU to pay that, even if they're going to get double or triple from the Big Ten. You also have to factor in when teams leave conferences and join other conferences. Normally, they don't get the full payout right away. It takes a few years. So even if FSU joins the Big Ten and makes around $100 million per year in TV money, if they're paying $572 million in a buyout fee, unless they're getting that money from somewhere else, it just doesn't make sense for them to pay that, because even if they make double or triple in the Big Ten, you're already paying $500 million just to leave, so you're already significantly in the hole. You would barely even break even by 2036 throughout this whole ordeal, when you could just stay in the ACC. So FSU is trying to work this out. That's why they're suing over the grant of rights and the fee. They're going to try and take it down. It's the same thing that Maryland did when they left for the Big Ten, but that was a different situation. The Florida State Board has voted unanimously on Friday to file a suit against the ACC to challenge the league's grant of rights and the extra $130 million withdrawal fee. So not only could they be paying $572 million because of the grant of rights, but on top of that, it would be another $130 million for a fee. Florida State is now in unprecedented territory. No school has ever challenged a grant of rights in court. At issue is what Florida State has described over the past year as not only growing revenue gaps with the SEC and Big Ten, expected to be over $30 million annually per school, but disagreements over the way the media rights money should be distributed within the ACC. That's the idea of unequal revenue distribution. Because FSU brings in more money to the ACC, they're always number one or number two in terms of TV ratings. They think they should get more money, and on top of that, they're getting screwed when you've got the likes of Northwestern and Maryland making roughly $30 million per year more. And it's only going to get worse in the coming years because this contract is so terrible. Both the Big Ten and the SEC will go back to the negotiation table. Again, we really don't know if that's going to happen. College football might just blow up completely and change into something different to where we could all be part of one big major conference. I think that's probably more realistic late in the 2020s. But let's just say it continues in this ecosystem. The Big Ten and the SEC, even already making almost double what Florida State is making, are going to go back to the negotiation table before Florida State does in 2036. The issue here for Florida State, they're trying to argue, it's so unfair. We bring in so much more for this conference. Yeah, well, so does Ohio State for the Big Ten. So does Michigan for the Big Ten. Yet those schools are not complaining. The real issue here for FSU is signing this deal and agreeing to it back in 2016. You should not agree to a 20-year TV deal when obviously things are going to change, and I'm sure FSU didn't think there would be all this conference realignment. This whole ordeal really started in when the SEC signed a mega TV deal, but also when Texas and Oklahoma left, which really vaulted the value of the SEC and caused a response from the Big Ten. And now FSU is sitting there saying, look, this is terrible. We're obviously worth more than this. The ACC at this point is kind of a floundering conference. We just went undefeated, didn't even make the playoff. Let's get out of here. Let's try and use whatever leverage we have to bring down whatever this massive exit fee ends up being. You can see in a quote, "Our actions today are less about the events of the last 2 weeks and far more about the actions of the ACC leadership over the past 10 years. And you can see how they're trying to swing it and say, oh no, the ACC's been terrible, when in reality, they're just looking at the other leagues, realizing that they're getting screwed over the next 10 to 15 years. They need to take action and argue whatever they can legally to say, oh, the ACC got a terrible deal. It's so unfair that we're the ones kind of the standard bearer, number one in terms of TV ratings, yet we make the same amount of money in our TV deal as all the other teams, as Boston College. The issue for FSU is they signed this deal. The only way I could see them, they're going to need other teams to come to their aid here as well, like a Clemson, like a North Carolina, teams that voted against the additions of SMU, Stanford, and California. But you can see the estimate there, $572 million. FSU board unanimously approves vote to take legal action over ACC. Ashburn said the penalty package for exiting the grant of rights would be severe, with a withdrawal penalty estimated around $500 million or more. Belief is that it is an unenforceable penalty. Both the grant of rights individually and the severe withdrawal penalty are collectively an unenforceable penalty. Breach of contract. FSU believes the ACC diluted television rights. Yeah, but the problem is if they signed the contract, I'm not sure how you can argue that unless the ACC did it after FSU signed the new grant of rights. And then there was also the reference of the Maryland exit situation out of the ACC. In 2012, Maryland said it was leaving the ACC and found a way to negotiate what the ACC said was around a $50 million exit fee down to $31 million. Typically, schools like Maryland did with the ACC pay about 60% of what they owe in exit fees, according to sources. Now, that's a different situation than this because this is a grant of rights that's said to be ironclad, very hard to break, but Maryland, in leaving the ACC for the Big Ten, trying to get a bump in TV money, they were able to get their fee down from 52 to 31, so I would imagine FSU is going to be able to get it down. The question is, how much is it actually coming down, and where would FSU go? Would it be the Big Ten, or would it be the SEC? And if they can cut that fee in half, I mean, because you're looking at two different fees right now, the rumored $500 million fee and then the $130 million withdrawal fee. If they can cut those down by half, it would make a lot more sense considering they're going to get double the money, maybe even more than double, especially when these teams end up renegotiating their TV deals late in the 2020s, early in the 2030s. I think the Big Ten is around 2033, which again would be before Florida State and the ACC gets back to the negotiation table. The ACC comes out with a statement saying Florida State's decision to file action against the conference is a direct conflict with their long-standing obligations and is a clear violation of their legal commitments to the other members of the conference. All ACC members, including FSU, willingly and knowingly re-signed the current grant of rights in 2016, and that is enforceable through 2036. So that's FSU's big issue. You can't be signing your rights away for 20 years when you don't know how the ecosystem is going to change. That's the number one fault here at play, is signing that contract through 2026. I mean, this would be so much easier to get out of. You know, this is almost like a Texas-Oklahoma situation. You're going to have to pay some in exit fees, but if you want to leave right now, let's say the deal is through 2026 and not 2036, it's a lot easier. The fact that it's an extra decade, it's a big issue, and it's really going to sting FSU. Maybe they're able to get the exit fees down a little bit, but they're still going to have to pay a lot. In terms of that, it might still be worth it just because of how bad the ACC's TV deal currently is. So this whole situation is a complete mess. And really, when it comes down to college football, it's like we're spinning in a circle here with all these different teams trying to leave. Lower-end conferences join the Big Ten or the SEC. I would imagine when it comes to the ACC, possibly 4 or 6 teams would be looking. The question is, would the Big Ten and the SEC take them? Right now, it seems like the SEC is standing pat, but I would imagine that would change. I think Florida State and Clemson fit the SEC, and then maybe a team like North Carolina, maybe Duke, possibly to the Big Ten, but that's just a guess. I have no clue. A lot of these teams in the ACC are going to have to realize the Big Ten and the SEC aren't interested. They're not going to dilute their TV money anymore by bringing on new teams, and they're just going to have to stay in the ACC. I still do think the ACC is going to exist in some capacity because unlike the Pac-12, they were proactive in adding teams. They've already added 3 teams to their conference. Even if they do lose 4 teams to the Power 2 conferences, they will still likely be a solid, mid-major conference, maybe slightly better than mid-major, depending on what happens to teams like Virginia Tech and Virginia, because I'm not sure how wanted those teams are. I know Virginia has a very good basketball program. They've got good academics. Virginia Tech, kind of a big school. So it'll be interesting with some of these programs in the ACC and how valued they are. Syracuse is another one, but I would imagine a lot of them would have to just remain in the ACC because the Big Ten and the SEC are almost filled up at this point. Now, certainly FSU is going to be able to join one of those conferences. The recent rumors have been the Big Ten But again, I think they fit better in the SEC, and the SEC is obsessed with keeping all their teams down south. They don't want to do what the Big Ten is doing, which is going all over the place. It'll be interesting to see how it works out, but it seems like FSU's doing this. They know they're going to have to pay some money, but this could potentially lower their fees, their withdrawal fee, their exit fee from the grant of rights by 50% if this works out for them, if they sue. But they're really just suing because they're pissed off they signed this terrible TV deal through 2036. Let's call it what it is, unless the ACC did something after they signed in 2016 to dilute their conference. I guess you could say, well, if they're bringing on SMU, Stanford, and Cal, that could potentially be an argument that they diluted our TV money by bringing on 3 new schools, but those 3 new schools aren't going to be even getting, the maximum TV money for multiple years. So this will be interesting to see how this works out. But either way, guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you're following me on X. Link to that's always in the description.